Apples exist for our enjoyment. Or do they? Apples and other plants manipulate people and animals in their master plan to spread their seeds. They even take advantage of the elements to reproduce. And it's working. Plants are found everywhere on this planet. Silent schemers, their quest is to take over the world and have us working for them. Plants, exploited and defenseless. They don't seem to have the wit or even the desire to escape. And animals seem hell-bent on their destruction. It's not warfare, it's slaughter. Plants seem doomed to a life of total subservience. Ever since the first humans, plants have been used for our convenience and pleasure. Like this tantalizing fruit. Was it the devil, or was it the irresistible power of the apple that ended the age of innocence? We still have our Adams and Eves, and we still have the clever, delicious apple. You see, the apple needs to go on this journey. Everything about it, its color, its fragrance, its flavor, is part of a scheming plot to be noticed. It fights for attention, competes with rivals to catch our eye. To be the one that finally gets chosen. Lurking within the luscious flesh is the real beneficiary of this journey, the apple seed. From the orchard to the supermarket to the shopping basket, this little pioneer has made an epic voyage. Its mission? To invade and colonize new territories. You could say that someone planted this tree, but maybe the tree wanted to be planted. Maybe plants will stop at nothing to propagate. Just like animals, plants are ruthless in their pursuit of immortality. And for the plants, this means having seeds that have mastered the art of mobility. For 100 million years or more, plants have been perfecting the designs of their little travelers. Every corner of the globe, no matter how remote and barren, has been invaded by plants. But it's not been easy. their world is seething with enemies. Sometimes other plants, often their age-old foes, animals. In Australia's northern plains is concealed the most bizarre relationship. Another example of the extraordinary lengths a plant will go to make sure that its seeds will travel. The temptress is a quinine bush. Each May she flaunts her round, firm, and succulent little plums, irresistible to her chosen clientele. A berry, dropped like a handkerchief, signals the start of the affair. The suitor is an emu. He's awkward and not too attractive, except maybe to his mother. But then mother, sister, uncles, and cousins all join in on this fruit-eating frenzy. The temptress's timing is perfect, for the emus are busy putting on fat for the winter. When the quinine is in season, emus eat almost nothing else. But it's not an easy diet. The berries take up to 72 hours to digest. This is all part of the quinine's plot. It allows the fruit to be taken far away from the parent bush. What went into the emu is a lot more appetizing than what comes out. Partially digested leaves and stems, and the hard pits of the fruit. Is this really the end that the quinine planned for its berries? To be ground in a gizzard, bathed in stomach acids, and then grilled in the midday sun? Of course not. The quinine is cooking up a surprise. Suddenly, with surprising violence, the pits detonate and shatter in the heat of the sun. Shrapnel from the exploding pits and the quinine's precious seeds are propelled up to 10 feet. And here they lie, naked and defenseless in the burning sun. Their fate now depends upon a fatty nodule attached to one end. Soon, bandits arrive. To a thieving ant, the fatty nodules are as irresistible as abandoned gold bars. Surely the seed is doomed. Or is the nodule another bribe to manipulate the enemy? Like much of Australia, this area is ravaged by forest fires. An exposed seed could be burnt to a crisp. And this thieving ant could be their only hope. Taken back home to the underground lairs, the seeds will be safe from the flames. Aha, but will they be safe from the jaws of the ants? These ants are scavengers, but it's not the seeds they're after. It's the fatty nodules. However sharp their jaws, the quinine seeds are too tough for them. The seeds are the passengers on this journey, while the nodules are perfect ant food. They're the ants' payment for doing the work. After the fires have passed by, it's safe for the ants to come out again. In the final triumphant leg of this amazing journey, the quinine seeds are thrown out, forgotten, and they are left to germinate. Of all the attributes that make seeds a success, their reserves of energy are the most important. Every seed needs energy to make its first roots and shoots in its race with other plants for nutrients and light. But most never stand a chance. These little packets of energy are as tempting as sitting ducks. For every sort of seed, there seems to be an army of beaks, gizzards, and grinding teeth, hell-bent on destroying it. Especially when Jaws has the teeth of a nutcracker. For something as plentiful as the oak, one would expect its seeds to be a solid investment. But its precious vaults are completely unguarded. This outlandish snout is not a mistake in nature, but a precision tool for cracking the safe. The weevil drills deep into the core of the acorn to reach the stores of starch. She slowly withdraws her snout, turns around to position her rear end over the hole she's made, and lays an egg. A final maternal prod to place the egg at the bottom of the shaft, and she'll be off to spread more eggs elsewhere. Insidious insects can destroy over half of all the acorns produced by a tree. But in California, oaks face even more opposition. Here, the oaks are varied, large, and prolific. In short, a banquet. The woodpeckers store acorns to get them through the winter and to help raise another brood next summer. Some larders hold 15,000 acorns, a huge temptation for rivals. Jays eye the woodpecker's cache. It takes a thief to spot a thief. The woodpeckers attack. Acorns are a precious commodity and are worth fighting for. In years of plenty, some acorns escape the raiders' attentions. Success for the oak at last? Having gorged on starch, the weevil's grub burrows out of the hollowed-out acorn to pupate in the soil. Will the oak ever outwit these professional thieves? Well, it has one great advantage: time. In its hundreds of years of producing acorns, maybe one or two will survive. animals are clearly a mixed blessing. By having seeds that are packed with energy, plants are setting themselves up to wholesale theft. The fruit is a bribe to attract the right animals and to manipulate their behavior. When it comes to cunning and intelligence, howler monkeys fit the bill. But they're still no match for the manipulative powers of plants. The cashew's plan is to bribe and distract the monkeys with the sweet, juicy fruit, with the energy-rich seed dangling underneath. The bright yellow fruits are a signal that the cashews are ready. The most aggressive monkeys eat on the spot. The others carry their fruit to nearby trees, just as the cashew had intended. The seeds are never eaten. The cashew has made them distasteful and even lethally poisonous. The plan has worked. Fruiting plants are like shop windows. Each is locked in a desperate battle with rival plants, and it has to appeal to customers who will only go for the best bargains in town. With a blackberry, green means, I'm not for sale. Red means, come back tomorrow. And black means, nibble me now, I'm delicious. Each sort of fruit has an advertising campaign, especially designed for the cutthroat world of the fruit supermarket. It may look like a banquet, but in reality, plants are fighting to stay in business. In this competitive world, it's no surprise that some plants go in for boutique marketing, a specialized product for a select clientele, especially in the tropics, where window shopping is like jungle warfare. The strangler fig is a silent, ruthless killer, a parasite, the social climber among rainforest trees. It's a nocturnal operator, so its advertisement is the sickly smell of the fig. Its select clientele are bats, and the fruits are tailor-made for them. But the tree is crawling with predators, hoping to feast on unsuspecting visitors. They select the ripest fruit, grab it in a flash, and take flight, just as the tree had intended. Squadrons of bats ferry figs off into the night to treetops inaccessible to the hungry boa. Bats keep their weight to a minimum, so they spit out as many of the indigestible seeds as possible. The strangler fig actually wants its seeds to be eaten, and it wants a rapid turnover. So it has the same effect on bats as figs are reputed to have on humans. This is in the bat's interest too. There's no point in flying with unnecessary cargo. Every night, millions of sticky seeds rain down from the canopy. But only those that happen to fall on a branch or twig will feature in the fig's plan for survival. In the tropical moisture, they quickly germinate. But most are demolished by microscopic herbivores. It's a perilous place high up in the branches of a rainforest tree. Once a seed has a grip on the branch of its host, it's able to scratch a living in the nooks and crannies of the bark. It is 200 feet up, bathed in light, but the life-giving soil is far below. How does this plant figure a way to get down? The little strangler fig works out a solution. Gradually, it sends roots all the way down to the ground. These roots proliferate and thicken, encasing the trunk of the host tree in a lethal straitjacket. Death for its host means new life for the strangler. But the losses are appalling. Countless millions of fig seeds fail for every one that succeeds. In Africa, the roulette of life is played on the barren lands around a water hole. The daily trek for water is spiced with danger. If you can run, you've got a chance. If not, well, tough luck. But there's one plant in Africa that's found a way to exploit these chilling realities of life, and stakes all on a bet that makes the strangler fig's mass production of seeds seem absurdly wasteful. The plant is a melon that has devised a method of making it safe to have a drink. Deep underground are water tanks filled with seeds. To create them, this plant has turned itself into a master of civil engineering. As it grows, it fastens itself to its surroundings with tendrils. With each bunch of tendrils is one female flower, surrounded by several males. When the female is fertilized, it bends over, thrusting its way downwards through the soil. The tendrils tighten their grip to provide an anchor, as a series of drills is produced at intervals along the stem. As it thrusts downwards, each soft-growing tip is protected with a sheath of removable scales. The shaft is anchored to the soil by multi-jointed hairs. When each drilling stem reaches a depth of about 3 feet, it produces a fruit, a small subterranean melon. It is now the dry season, and no trace of the melon plant remains above ground. Who in all of Africa has the need and the ability to dive for underground water? The aardvark, a charming, lumbering nose of a beast. A lonely trudge to the water hole would be suicidal. The ripe melons give off a scent that percolates up through the soil. But only the aardvark has both the nose to detect them and the equipment to dig them out. The reward of the aardvark is life-saving water and a few indigestible pits. Much better than a perilous trip to a water hole. For the melon seeds, a quick trip through an aardvark does them no harm. Indeed, the aardvark obligingly buries its droppings, ensuring a supply of drinking water for the next dry season. This is surely the least wasteful of plants, to offer its fruits with such precision to just one species of mammal. But this method is not risk-free, for what would happen to the melons if aardvarks became extinct? The island of Mauritius displays the perils that await any plant trusting or foolish enough to embark upon a monogamous relationship. For if that species vanishes, the plant will vanish with it. These gaunt branches belong to a 300-year-old Calvaria tree. It's one of the last remaining survivors of a great forest that once covered the island. Despite their great age, they still produce fruit. But year after year, it just falls to the ground and rots. And none sprout to produce Calvaria seedlings. There are fruit eaters around, but none show the slightest interest in the Calvaria's fruit. So, what has become of the animals that these ripe fruits are designed to attract? In 1598, disaster struck Mauritius. It was visited by Dutch explorers on their way to the East Indies. They established a thriving colony to provision the galleons that crossed the Indian Ocean. To the beleaguered sailors, Mauritius seemed like heaven. But it didn't last long. The island's resources were plundered. Since Mauritius had no sizable predators of its own, many of its inhabitants had become slow and trusting. Easy meat for the colonists. Flightless birds, giant lizards, multicolored parrots were all driven to extinction. The most famous of these was the dodo, a giant flightless pigeon that was no match for hungry sailors. Could it be then that these fruits are vainly waiting for the feeding call of the dodo? No one can be sure. But we do know that Calvaria once relied upon fruit eaters that became extinct around 300 years ago. When these last few trees finally rot and fall, Calvaria too will vanish from the Mauritian forests. If plants are seeking mobility, they don't need to look further than the Earth itself. There's enough raw energy here to move mountains, let alone something as tiny as a seed. The relentless machinery of the weather is available to any plant with the ability to harness these primeval forces. And it's totally free. Free as the wind, and free from the cost of dealing with animals. No elaborate advertising here. Just a thorough understanding of aerodynamics and the skills of mass production. Look at an orchid pod. It contains millions of fragile seeds, each one as light as a speck of dust. But they're so minuscule, with such small reserves of energy, that most never manage to germinate. Bigger seeds carry more reserves, but need the assistance of parachutes to keep them airborne. They are inexpensive and mass-produced, and at times they fill the air like snowflakes. They are so small that animals don't bother with them, and they're light enough to fly to every corner of the globe. These airborne troops, however, are weighed down with more provisions and are carried into battle on helicopter blades. Rotating wings slow their descent from the treetops so the wind can carry them further. Even a gentle breeze will transport them several yards, far enough to be out of their parents' shadow. For some plants, traveling is less important than timing. An English wood in March. The bluebells take the first tentative steps, preparing for a meeting with a rainstorm in July. Namibia, a place virtually devoid of moisture. Yet the plants here also use the physical power of rain to guarantee the release of their seeds. Mesembryanthemums are the mistresses of this hostile place. They have tamed its every mood. For years on end, they can endure the drought. Fleshy, succulent leaves holding onto a supply of water, refusing to flower. They are dormant, waiting for rain. Dead stalks and tightly closed seed pods are all that remain of long-forgotten flowers. In Israel, yet another desert plant is tuned into the weather. The desiccated remains of the blepharis are poised for the arrival of rain. But when will the rain come? How could a dead plant predict when to release its seeds? For the bluebells, it's easy. It rains every summer. The heavy drops from the summer canopy dislodge the seeds from their little cups at precisely the right season for germination. In Namibia, the first rain moistens the dead capsules, and in an entirely mechanical response, they open to expose the seeds. The next rains wash them out, for only now is the soil moist enough for them to germinate. In Israel, blepharis responds to rain too. The dead stems immediately soak up moisture, exposing the structures that protect and contain the seeds. They rupture violently, scattering seeds in all directions. Their first action is to gain a foothold before the next storm washes them away. Within seconds, a covering of tiny hairs reaches out to contact the damp soil as the seed sucks up moisture before the desert dries up. Within 6 hours of landing, the first root emerges, and the hair's grip as it pushes downwards, anchoring the seedling firmly against the erosive power of the wind. For blepharis, success is all a matter of timing. At some destinations, the reception committee leaves a lot to be desired. Coconut crabs. At almost 10 pounds, the largest land-living crustaceans scour the beach for new arrivals. They tear off the protective husk, crack open the shell, and devour the meat. A seafaring coconut makes landfall. With luck, the reception committee will be preoccupied. This coconut may have been at sea for months, but now, safely ashore, it has a chance to germinate. But this seed doesn't need to travel. It has already found its perfect island paradise. The Seychelles, far out in the Indian Ocean, are home to the world's most astonishing palm, the coco de mer. Nothing about this palm is ordinary. It has the largest leaves of any plant on Earth, and when they fall, they carpet the ground like huge sheets of cardboard, more than 13 feet across. But what impressed the early visitors to these islands was not the leaves, but the nuts. These gargantuan fruits can weigh over 45 pounds, and they are more than 3 feet around, the world's largest by far. The male palms have the world's longest and possibly the most suggestive flowers, at over a yard long. Nobody knows who carries the pollen from these grotesque giants to the female palms, although there's no shortage of candidates. Millions of years of island isolation encourage the strangest liaisons. But one thing is certain. In this mysterious forest of giant palms, it pays to be vigilant. Each nut takes about 7 years to mature. So a stroll in the forest becomes a game of Russian roulette. Not with bullets, but with bombs. The nuts hit the ground at 40 miles per hour with devastating force. They are, in effect, penetration bombs that smash their way down through the dead leaves to the soil. Legends abound about these palms, most of them erotic. But their biological function is to provide enough energy for a single massive stem that grows underground for many feet before resurfacing to produce a new palm. The strategy of this enigmatic seed is not to travel as other seeds do, but to stay right where it is, on its island of giants. As missile systems go, there are smarter weapons than the coco de mer. The armory of plants is bursting with ballistic devices. They're all designed to launch their seeds on self-propelled journeys, free from the dependence of animals. Self-propulsion is not limited to bombardment. Many seeds, including wild oats, drill themselves into the soil where they have landed. Changes in humidity make them curl and twist as ribbons of stiff bristles grip the soil. this little seed know that it must burrow to be safe from predators? To be ready to sprout at a moment's notice? Does it and its army of little friends have plans for propagation? Concealed even in the most tranquil of settings, there is always the ruthless and devious seed, apparently scheming to manipulate animals. A famous inventor, Monsieur de Mistral, and his dog both had encounters that made them wary of plants. Years of hunting in the Swiss Alps brought aggravation caused by burdock plants. The dog collected more burrs than peasants, though that was hardly his fault. Getting a free ride reveals the most malevolent, exploitative characteristic of plants. Here in Arizona is a device most aptly called the devil's claw. Green pods dry and split to reveal a contraption that becomes an instrument of torture. Because it's a good place to grow, each pod drops one seed on the ground. The curved spurs are a device to make sure that the other seeds are carried away for free. The limping deer knows that there is something wrong with its hoof, though it may not understand the motives of the devil's claw. Success at last? Disguised as stones and almost as hard, the devil's seeds wait for the rains. The burdock's ingenious methods depend more on its hitchhiking abilities.
Ah, dis donc, Jean-Marc. T'es plein de bardane, mon gaillard.
Being an engineer by profession, Monsieur de Mistral decided to investigate how the burdock clung on with such tenacity. Might anything useful come from this infuriating seed? Five years later, in 1957, Monsieur de Mistral perfected Velcro, a direct consequence of both man's inventiveness and the cunning nature of plants. Velcro is but one example of man's ruthless exploitation of plants. We grow them, we eat them, smoke them, wear them, even engineer their genetics, changing the face of our planet to maximize their production. We may think we have mastered our natural world, but instead, have we become slaves to the very plants we believe we dominate? by their cooperation and even compliance. Have they not forced us to guarantee their immortality by making it impossible for us to survive without them? And even when we leave our world to explore and colonize the outer limits of the universe, we will have to share our adventure with those clever and life-sustaining plants, the ultimate travelers in space and time.